Let's take a look at every one-star Super Nintendo game. And I'm sure some of them deserve it, but I bet there's several that don't. The games in this video were rated 1 star in Pat Contree's Ultimate Nintendo Guide to the Super Nintendo Library, or Guide to the SNES Library if you're in the UK. 23 one-star Super Nintendo games to go through. We're gonna see what they're like. And if you agree or disagree, you gotta let me know in the comments. And if you dig this style of video, make sure you're subscribed, as I always have new ones coming up. Oh, coming in strong with The Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle from THQ. Now, the other Rocky and Bullwinkle game for the NES also got a 1-star review, and this one, well, I don't know if it deserves a 1-star, but it's certainly not great. I'll only show you a bit of the first stage anyway, but it shows a little bit more gameplay, at least with this one. You can headbutt the enemies, you're doing a lot of climbing and some platforming, some jumping around. You can, shoot enemies, you just throw stuff at them. That's right, Boris. I mean, the game has bright, vivid colors, but the other problem is the cartoon itself didn't have colors this vivid, I don't think. When you play the game, there's a couple of side mini-games that you can also play too. You got Peabody and Sherman here. Kind of an interesting kind of boss fight, in a way. You can experience this for a while, just to get yourself a break from the actual game. There's also one based on Dudley Do-Right, where you're just trying to outrun the train, but of course the more obstacles that get in your way, the more you get closer to the train. Yeah, no suplexing the train in this game, unfortunately, but yeah, The Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle. Here you go. Balls made the list. Is it 3D Balls or Balls 3D? I think I've usually seen this game listed as Balls 3D, but this title screen clearly says 3D Balls. I thought it was kind of an innovative game for its time too. You choose your fighter, I mean, you're all constructed of these balls, and that's what gives the game kind of a 3D appearance. You know, different fighters, different characters, they have their own fighting abilities. Well, this was during a time when there are so many fighting games out there. Gotta do something to make yourself stand out. And this one certainly stood out. I don't know if it stood out in the right way, but at least it stood out. I had fun renting this a couple of times. It's not great, but is it a 1-star game? I don't know. At least it's kind of fun to look at. You ever played Barbie Dream Model back in the day? I did. I'm not kidding when I say I would rent literally any video game I hadn't played. And I literally remember renting this one. I took it back the same day, but still, there's less chaos involved with this one. You can't just do your own thing, but you're driving down, you got your car, sure. And there's little stops along the way too, like little mini games that are perfect for the younger player who want to do something like this. Again, there's more cars, more driving. Yeah, you're driving down Hollywood Boulevard, you got the Star of Fame in the background, and you have these mini games where it's like you have to practice walking the runway or something like that. Here's the thing though, I'm pretty sure this game was made by some dude, not realizing that girls played video games too. You didn't need this video game. Girls played all the video games, but was anyone actually actively seeking this game? I'm not sure. Yeah, 1 star, I'd give it that for sure. Bebes Kids had the potential to actually be a pretty decent video game. Now, I was actually a big fan of the movie, the animated film that came out. I wasn't familiar with the comedian, but I did enjoy watching this movie. I think it's still kind of a fun movie today, too. And after you choose your character, it turns into a side-scrolling beat-em-up. Now, side-scrolling beat-em-ups were kind of trending at the time, so why not have a version based on Bebes Kids? Well, when you start playing it for about 3 seconds, you realize, why not? Your attacks are very limited. The enemies themselves actually take way too many hits for them to be defeated. Like most games, it just take, like 2 rounds. You punch them until they fall down, they get back up, you punch them again. When they fall down again, they should be out for the count. This one, it's a sludging game that may not be worth your while. 1 star? I mean, yeah, maybe. Well, what do you think? Cannondale Cup is another game that looks like it could have some potential, especially if it looks like the back of the box, or you see it in a magazine or something like that. You have different bikers you can choose from. Yeah, you're all cycling in this game. A lot of options you can choose from. And then the game itself, well, that's when the fun ends. The frame rate on this game has much to be desired. I like the idea that you're going around in laps and you have the road rash idea where you can kind of like trip the other players in a way, but it's also like still a cycling game, and like after you get past the first lap, you're like 9 more laps to go. 9? God. Cannondale Cup, it's a Super Nintendo game that most people probably haven't even heard of, and until today, that was good. And now you've heard of it, and now you know. Whoa, wait, there's a Capcom game that's a 1-star game? Oh, it's football. Yeah, I mean, I can't comment too much on the football games, and there's a couple of them on this list. It looked like it would play okay, but it was a little not very user-friendly to play this game. This game is called Dream TV. Dream TV, not to be confused with Smash TV, which is a pretty fun game. It's a little confusing. I mean, first of all, I didn't even see a title screen. I must have skipped over it. And you have a 2 players, you know, there's like the top screen, the bottom screen, and everything. You can control both with the L and R button. Like you know, one frame freezes, and then you start playing the other screen. And again, there could be some fun with this. Like maybe there's puzzles later on, like if it's like Lost Viking style, where you have to use one to unlock something, like to hold the door open, and then you have to switch over to the other one to get the other player through. There might be some fun with that game. But man, I couldn't get very far back then or now to even care to play the game that far. Dream TV, I think, is definitely worth passing up on. Emmett Smith Football. Emmett Smith was popular enough to get his own game. And again, another football game that looks like it could have some potential. It could be okay, but still not very user-friendly. And when you remove the user-friendliness of a football game, people who don't even play football should be able to just pick up the game and start playing it. And there are several football games out there during this time and before that were exactly that. You didn't have to care about football, you didn't have to have a favorite team, you could just pick it up, you knew what you were doing, and you get to start playing it. This game, not very user-friendly.
First down.
Curious to see the Flintstones on the list. Now, the Flintstones had a live-action movie in the early 90s that was, believe it or not, pretty popular. And to capitalize on that, let's make a video game. And I think this game, it is by Ocean, and Ocean is known for not making the best games. But this game is not terrible. It's really not. I don't think it's a 1-star game at all. I mean, again, it's not the best game ever, but, you know, and generally speaking, the movie games that would come out are usually not the greatest, but this game was actually kind of playable a little bit. You got a few different attack options, and it plays like, you know, your typical other platformer style. There's a lot of fun to be had with a game like this. And you play as John Goodman playing as Fred Flintstone. I mean, come on now. I don't think this game deserves a 1-star, but you let me know what you think. Well, this game made the NES list as well. We got it on the Super Nintendo. This is the Great Waldo Search. And if you play the NES version, it plays the same. Now, how hilarious is this? The very first thing you see, well, I mean, you're trying to find Waldo. On the other side, Waldo sticks out the most in this picture, more than the sky. Come on. Well, it's certainly not made for difficulty in mind, but yeah, the Great Waldo Search. You're looking for Waldo, gotta find the scroll. You can find the dog too, and the dog opens up a little mini game that you can get points and all that. Again, I don't think it's a 1-star game, but you can certainly get your playthrough. Once you've already gone through it, you're done. You never need to play it ever again. James Bond Jr., another winner from THQ. Well, it was interesting to me, it plays completely different than the NES version. The NES version was not a 1-star game. And it's odd with this one because it starts out as a little bit of an action game. Okay, you kind of get it, right? Based on the cartoon of the time. And it immediately goes to a side-scrolling shooter. And the side-scrolling shooter takes a while to get through. Like, you play as this action game and all of a sudden you're stuck in the shooter. Pick a game. It'd have to be one or the other. Well, when you do finally get through the side, and the side-scrolling shooter, believe it or not, it's actually not a terrible idea. One-hit kill, unfortunately. You do get some power-ups and upgrades and stuff while you're going through this. You know, there's a boss at the end of the stage. And then you go back to the kind of action-y part of the game. And unfortunately, as much as I want this game to be that action-y part of the game, the shooter's the best part. Either way, 1-star, probably. Jamit was a game that, that used digitized photos for your graphics in-game. And it's kind of your basic one-on-one style, but even with a one-on-one style, it does not play very well. And I don't know if it's because the graphics are what they are to make the play controls kind of confusing, because, you know, you're not animated the way you should be animated. Very choppy. I don't know. I couldn't get into it. Huh, yeah. I had a feeling this game might make the list. Lester the Unlikely. There is a genre for the time that would be like this. And there's been a few games in the past. Prince of Persia, Flashback, Out of This World, or Another World, depending on where you're from. Kind of a interesting platformer where you have to climb and then drop down and pick up items. You play it at a little bit of a slower pace, but in this game you play as your stereotypical nerd, your geek. Bad posture, glasses, which I take offense to. You know, timid, like you see an enemy and you start running the other direction. Not only is the game not very good as far as literally everything is concerned, it's a lot longer of a game than it needs to be too. One time I went through this game, just with the Game Genie. You know, just to play through the game, just to go through the motions, just to not say I beat the game, but just to go, you know, just to go from start to finish and see what the game looks like from... I couldn't beat it. I couldn't even get through it. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, based on a movie of the... Well, I mean, it's based on a book too, right? But this is the Mary Shelley's Frankenstein based on a movie that came out during this time. Games from Sony ImageSoft. And it actually kind of looks kind of cool. And it plays kind of decently too. I mean, not super well, but interesting that you play as this interpretation of Frankenstein's monster. Now, I enjoyed the movie very much. I actually liked this movie quite a bit. So interesting to play the game. And the game itself, I didn't think it was terrible. There was a lot of games during this time that just kind of pump out like, oh, here's the movie, and then here's the video game based on the movie. And you know what you're getting into. You know you're not going to get like the best game ever. But I didn't think it was terrible, and I certainly don't think it was a 1-star game. But again, you let me know what you think. Here's NFL Football, simple enough. And another game where it looks like it could be okay. Again, not user-friendly. That's going to be the problem with literally every sports game. Well, it's also the problem with literally every video game. If it's not user-friendly, why would you want to play it? Why would you want to learn how to play it or figure out how to play it? Should just be able to pick it up and start going. And this game, although probably better than the other football games we just saw on the list, is still not great.
Incomplete.
Now, I was pretty excited, believe it or not, to play this Olympics game based on the Atlanta Games of 1996. Big year for Olympics here in the United States, because we had the Olympics in our backyard in Atlanta, Georgia. And I like the track and field games, and I've liked the kind of Olympics games because a lot of them play like a track and field kind of game. This one, oh, no. Not super well, not super great. I mean, they tried to do it with the weird angle. You don't need to do a weird angle. Don't do a weird angle. Just play it just typical. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of sports you can choose from, but again, if they don't play well, then this game's not going to play well, unfortunately. I don't know, have you kind of noticed that the games that are based specifically on the Olympics endorsed games aren't great, and the ones that are loosely based on the Olympics are usually pretty good? Well, that was this case too. What's next? Oh dear God. Alright, so Pit Fighter in the arcade, pretty decent game. Pit Fighter on the Sega Genesis, alright, yeah, it's a good port of the arcade game. The Super Nintendo version, not good. What happened between the arcade version and the Sega Genesis version where we got the Super Nintendo version that we wanted to see? Because there was a Nintendo tax even back then. And I don't just mean price-wise, I mean, for some reason we had it in our minds, at least I did, and maybe you did too, that a game on the Super Nintendo was supposed to be better than the Sega Genesis version. The Sega Genesis version was supposed to be its own thing, and fine, and I love Genesis, but there was that mentality where if it's on the Super Nintendo, it's gonna be the better version. And time has proved, time and time again, that that's not always the case. In fact, it's only maybe half the time is that the good case. There are so many times that the Sega Genesis version was better than the Super Nintendo version. This one was absolutely one of those situations. Do not play Pit Fighter on the Super Nintendo. Pro Quarterback, another football game. And you know what? This one, as choppy as it is, it actually plays okay-ish. I like the fact that when they tackle you for like 10 yards. I thought that was kind of funny. Unfortunately, it's more the animation and the choppiness and everything that'll get you to not want to play this game for very long. Another football game on the list. There are several football games on the Super Nintendo, and a lot of them are actually pretty decent, but there's a lot of them that are not worth checking out. This would be one of them. Race Driving, another game from the arcade coming to the Super Nintendo, and I was so interested to play this game. Now, the hard driving, the race driving, the games aren't very good, and we have to tell ourselves that, but because of the time, they were ahead of themselves because they were using polygons, and polygons made for that smooth animation. Unfortunately, because of the Super Nintendo, you had polygons and not smooth animation. Which, at that point, why would you even care about polygons? Well, you can do things with polygons that you can't really do with pixel graphics, I understand that. But you can on the Super Nintendo, but either way. So it's sticking with the polygons and doesn't play very well. The best part about this game, and I think you'll agree, are the instant replays. Like, you want to crash, just so you can see the instant replay of you crashing. And that's the only redeeming quality of Race Driving. Rex Ronan, Experimental Surgeon. Has there ever been a game in the history of video games that's educational and actually very, very, very good and very fun? This one had the potential, out of all of them, this one had the potential of being an educational style game that you learn something along the way. And I'm not just talking about, like, you know, playing the Jeopardy or some other game show game where you're learning stuff. You're attacking the grime and stuff on your teeth, at least in this first stage and everything. And along the way, you'll get, you know, there's little trivia things. And the trivia things, you don't really learn anything. The trivia things are common sense more than anything. So, yeah, all right, sure. Yeah, you didn't know this was a real game? Oh, it's real, all right. Road Riot, four-wheel drive, interesting enough, another game from Atari and Tengen. But these Atari Tengen games were licensed for Super Nintendo, unlike the NES ones. And again, this one, when you first look at it, it looks like it could be pretty cool. Again, you get into that choppy animation. That doesn't mean that the game's terrible, but it does hamper your gameplay a bit. And you even have an ability to shoot for some reason, because, you know, why not? It's it's the future. Now, you can choose where you want to go or who you want to go up against, and then just kind of do more of the same. Kind of a generic game. It's kind of basic. Is it 1 star? Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Space Ace for the Super Nintendo had potential to be okay. Now, again, it's not going to be the same Space Ace that you saw in the arcade with the animation and all that, although you do get a clip of animation in a way every time you die. That animation, when you die, the different ways you die, is both the best part of this game and the worst part of this game. Best part because it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun to see what would have happened, right? The worst part is, it happens every time you die. Yeah, and it gets really annoying. Like, sometimes you just want to die and get it over with, go back to your stage, but then you die, and you gotta wait for the animation, which doesn't take very long, but still, it's long enough for you to go, come on. Just want to get back to what I was doing. Not very intuitive as far as, like, where to go, because sometimes you're like, oh, I can jump over to that. No, you can't. And then later on, you're like, I can't jump over to that. Oh, no, maybe you can. But when you're different, I don't know. It's a 1 star for sure. At least in my opinion. Street Combat hurts my feelings to be on this list, but I think it's justified. Now, this was during a time when Street Fighter II was the best game in the world, so why wouldn't you want to capitalize on that and make your own 2D fighting game? Well, here's Street Combat with a host of crazy characters. Some of them look pretty cool, some of them look, you know, kind of cookie cutter, but still something to play. You've already played Street Fighter II, you're gonna take a break from that, you want to play something else, try to find that fix. Try to find that Street Fighter 2 fix without it being Street Fighter 2 again. Well, you have Street Combat, and I mean, it's not the best game in the world. There's a couple of moves you can do, a couple of things. I mean, you jump around, you can punch and kick, and you know, you have your special moves that you can do as well, of course. I mean, that's what makes a Street Fighter game is, you know, not about the fighting mechanic, it's about what kind of special moves can you do. But again, a very generic fighter. What hurts my feelings is, and you probably already knew this, but this game came out in Japan as a Ranma 1/2 game, and Ranma 1/2, my favorite anime of all time. Now, you can order the import and play the Japanese version of this, but even the Japanese version of this specific game is pretty rough. And there's a few fighting games in Japan for Ranma 1/2, but this was the one they brought over. I mean, yes, we had a Ranma 1/2 game, but there's another Ranma 1/2 game that would have been it's a better fighting game. I wish they would have used that one instead of this one. But still, Street Combat, it made the list, it made the book, 1 star. What are you gonna do? Well, what you're gonna do, hopefully, is subscribe and then check out this video of when I checked out all the 1-star NES games. Thank you so much for watching. We'll have to check out some 5-star games in the future, too. And maybe 1-star games on other consoles, we'll see.